This is Mag212, and today I'm going to be integrating the Nerf zombiestrike crossfire and the Firestrike. I bet you're wondering how that's going to work. But I'm not going to say any more. I'm just going to get into it and unscrew everything and update you guys when I make progress. For this mod, you could of course go buy a crossfire, but if you've made a strifire, you probably have some of these left over. I didn't really need to buy a crossfire, but I bought it anyway. This is the only part you will be needing from the zombiestrike crossfire. This is what the inside of the Firestrike looks like. Just quickly going over what pieces you don't need for this mod. You don't need the dart holder because you're going to be cutting up the shell. You don't need this front little tip. You can just take that off. You're also not going to need this piece anymore, and you're not going to need the entire front barrel of the Firestrike, so you can just rip that off and throw this out. So now I've taken the Firestrike plunger tube and I cut off the little nubs on the tip right here, and what I'm going to be doing is taking the plunger tube, lining it up with the crossfire barrel, and I'm going to glue that into place with some super glue. I finished gluing the plunger tube onto the barrel, so I'm just going to wipe the excess glue off with a tissue. So that's done now, and we just have to cut down the shell to accommodate this new barrel. Okay, so I finished cutting the Firestrike shell down, and this is what it looks like. I made a straight cut down, and then a little notch into here. Now, as you can see, I have went and done a spring addition, and I decided to add a cut down part of a triad spring, and I also made some epoxy putty molds just so the plunger tube sits in very nicely and it's held together. But I wanted to get even better performance than just adding a spring, so I'm going to be using 17/32 brass, and I'm going to be making brass barrels for the crossfire. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'll show you guys what it looks like once I've done it. So this is my finished Crosstrike pistol or 4-shot Firestrike. Unfortunately, I had to make some very important changes and additions, which I neglected to cover because I forgot to record the segments. But that's okay because I'll go over them now. I decided to cut the Firestrike shell in a different way. I just made a straight cut like that, which I think looks neater. I actually didn't need to make the notch there. I just modified the barrels a little bit. I also added a K26 spring, which is very strong and it's giving me a lot of power. It may be hard to tell with the gold paint job, but I do have some brass barrels. I just rammed little pieces of 17/32 brass into the barrel. I have a little more in the top barrels because obviously the top ones are stronger than the bottom. I think in the top I have approximately 2 centimeters and then only 1 in the bottom. That's really all, so now I'm going to cover the paint scheme. The base coat was a Rust-Oleum gold metallic spray paint, which I used on my Strife modification. I had a little bit left after that, so I decided to use it on this, and I think the finish looks really good. And then in a Citadel Genestealer purple brush paint, I brushed on little details, which look very nice, and it contrasts with the gold very nicely. I think the orange accents actually complement the purple really well because they are complementary colors. That's all, so now I'll cut to a firing demo and some chronograph readings. As you can see, the Firestrike does indeed shoot from each of the barrels without having to reload. So I can load up all 4, prime once, shoot, and it'll shoot the top one, and I could continue until I'm out of darts. I really love the idea of having a blaster with the pullback prime that has multiple shots. Yes, of course, I could have bought a Rebel Messenger or a Triad and used that, but this is way cooler and it has one more shot. And it's also very small and very thin as opposed to something like the Strong Arm, so it'd be really easy to holster it. And personally, if I was running a sidearm, this would be my sidearm for any Nerf war. But that covers my video on my Crosstrike or my 4-shot Night Finder. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.